God, I love these books. Hello everyone, welcome back to Becca's Book Nook. Today we are talking about Emily Henry. This is part 2 of my favorite authors series, and if you are not new to this channel, you've probably heard me talk about Emily Henry probably a million times. I read 2 of her books last summer, and I did just finish Book Lovers by her, which is her new book that just came out at the beginning of May, and I have lots to say about it, and she remains my favorite romance author, fiction, romance, rom-com-y author of all time, so I did want to make a video about her and include it in this series since I did my Lynn Painter one first, and now I do want to talk about Emily Henry. So, as I said, if you're not new to this channel, you have probably heard me talk about this guy about a million times. I feel like I mention people we meet on vacation at least like once every 2 videos, maybe once a video. But I read this book last June and it changed my life. Not to be dramatic, but I really related to this book. I fell in love with the story, the characters, everything about it. I recommended it to every single person that I know reads. I made my mom read it, my aunt, my roommates, my friends from school, everyone. It just had a really big impact on me emotionally, and I just fell in love with it, and Emily Henry quickly became my favorite romance author after reading it. And I also did read Beach Read last year, which I'm going to talk about as well, and as I mentioned, I did just finish Book Lovers. So I'm just going to jump into talking a little bit about each of these books in case there are people watching that haven't read them yet. I'm going to tell you what I rated them, what I loved about them, and why I think Emily Henry is such a phenomenal author. Starting off, I am just going to quickly talk about Beach Read, which is my, I don't want to say least favorite because I love them, but of her 3 books, it is my 3rd favorite. I feel like my ranking is a little controversial based on what I've seen on TikToks. I know quite a few people don't like the book that is my top book and would rank the 3 very differently, but for me, Beach Read is my 3rd favorite. But I'm still obsessed with it, so I'm really hate saying least favorite because I love it and I would read it a million times over. Beach Read was the first Emily Henry book that I read, and I think I read it a year ago now in May. It was one of my first romancy books that I read because The Unhoneymooners and The Hating Game were the 2 books that really got me into contemporary romance, and then I picked up Beach Read because I'd heard so many amazing things about it, and it was about authors, and I am really hoping to write something one day, so I was really interested to read it. I rated Beach Read 4 out of 5 stars, which is still really great. As you can see, I still love it. It's not like of her 3 books, I hate this one. But in case you don't know what Beach Read is about, it is about January and Augustus, and they live beside each other in these beach houses. January has just moved in to her dad's house that he shared with his lover, and it's a little bit uncomfortable for her, obviously. Her dad recently passed away, and she is sort of trying to get a better understanding of what was going on in his life and sort of work through the fact that he was cheating on her mom for a long part of her life, and she really just needs to come to terms with that and just sort of learn a lot about herself and about her family in the process. And she has moved into this house for, I think it's just the summer, and she's moved there because she is in a little bit of a writer's block, a little bit of a slump with her writing. She's a romance novelist, and she just has no inspiration going on in her head, and she finds out that the person living next door to her was her sort of academic rival, sort of, from college, this guy, Gus, who she really did not like in university, and they're suddenly living beside each other, and he is an author as well, but he writes more about history and more dark and important issues, and he is also in a slump. So in order to sort of get a new perspective on writing and sort of get themselves out of their slump, they decide to swap genres. So Gus is going to write a romance book, and January is going to write a deeper piece that she's not used to writing, just to see if she can get a different perspective on writing and see if she can get herself out of her slump. Obviously, they fall in love. It's a romance. It's a It's a romance book. All of Emily Henry's books, by the way, are not under romance. They're all in fiction, which I love because they're romance books, but romance is a subplot for a bit of it. Mainly her books are about self-discovery and identity and just learning something new about yourself. And Beach Read is definitely about identity and January discovering new things about her family and herself that she sort of needs to realize and understand in order to be more successful. So I do love that about Emily Henry's books. So when I started reading Beach Read, I fell in love with it right away. I read the book fairly quickly because I just fell in love with Gus. Like, Emily Henry writes a good male character for sure, and she writes great female characters too. January was very complex and interesting, and they were very funny. I enjoyed their banter together, and I just loved them together. I loved her romantic-y scenes as well because she's very well done. She's a phenomenal writer, and she does a really great job with those sorts of scenes. It makes me feel all the emotions. I remember being in tears at the end of Beach Read, and I can't even really remember why. I remember it being emotional, but it's been a year now. I feel like I need a reread just because you read so many books in a year and there's parts that stand out, but a lot of them sort of blur together. But Beach Read, I loved January. I loved that she was dealing with these complex, important, and confusing issues in her life that she needed to work through and figure out in order to discover new things about herself and grow as a writer and a person. And it was a really phenomenal book. It's a great book to read on a beach. I didn't get to. I got to read it on my deck and in my house, but it was really, really great. 4 out of 5 stars. My third favorite of her books, but I would still read it over 1,000,000 times. Next up, I'm going to talk about Book Lovers, which is her newest book. And I actually don't have Book Lovers on me currently because I am loaning it out to a friend because I did the same thing that I did with people we meet on vacation and told everyone around me that they needed to read it the second I was finished with it. I don't have Beach Read either because it's in my apartment, but anyway, that's beside the point. I finished Book Lovers in 2 days. I went to get it the day that it came out, and I read half of it, and then I read the second half the next day. And I just sobbed for the last 20 pages of the book. It hit me in all the feels. I got all the emotions. But I don't want to talk about the ending first. This book was a 5-star read for me. It was my first 5-star read of May, and because it came out on May 3rd, and I rated it 5 stars the second I finished it. I absolutely was in love with this book. I loved that it was barely enemies to lovers because the main characters, Nora and Charlie, had met each other a few other times and they just didn't really get off on the right foot. So I wouldn't really call it enemies to lovers, but they started off with just a weird opinion of each other. Back to Emily Henry writing phenomenal male characters. Let's talk about Charlie Lostra because obsessed. I'm obsessed with him. He is hilarious. Him and Nora had the most amazing banter with each other. I was laughing out loud at their conversations with each other. It just made me crave a relationship like that where you immediately have a quip back at the other person and it's just constant back and forth. I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal and hilarious and I crave that sort of relationship. Nora was an amazing character. I really loved this book because as an older sibling, I definitely related to the feeling of protectiveness over your younger sibling and feeling like you don't want to fail them and making sure you're constantly there for them and not really being able to let go of them and let them grow a little bit. I definitely do feel overly protective of my little brother and I want to make sure that he's not in any pain or feeling any hurt or anything like that. And I do struggle to remember that he's now an adult and I need to let go a little bit and let him live his life and make those mistakes. So I definitely related to Nora on that note. which was really, really cool. I loved being able to relate to the main character on such a big level. These scenes, the romance scenes, made me like literally like jaw dropped at the page. They were insane. I felt all the butterflies while I was reading it, which is my favorite. I loved the setting. It was so cute, small town vibes. And I loved that they both work in like editing and publishing. That was a super interesting take on it as well. And I liked seeing Nora come out of her shell a little bit, I guess. She's just seen as this sort of like badass sort of character. It reminded me of Sandra Bullock's character in The Proposal a little bit, or at least that's how she felt people perceived her. And it was nice to see Charlie not only tell her that he loved that side of her and be so accepting of that side of her, but also bring her out of her shell a little bit and be a little bit more easygoing and relaxed and just more herself around him, which was really exciting to see. I loved the side characters as well. I loved Libby. I thought she was adorable and super cute. And I just liked hearing about the different relationships and the different sort of characters in the story that were so different from each other. Overall, I loved this book. I got super emotional at the ending. As I said, just because it was such a perfect ending. Everything, it was such a, I could just see it playing out like a rom-com, like a movie rom-com, and it was so beautifully done, and I just was emotional because of how good everything panned out, and the whole like Charlie showing up at the bookstore on the anniversary or her mother's birthday, and it was so beautiful. Like I can't wait to reread this book and tab it and highlight some stuff because it was amazing, and I'm so excited for everyone around me to read it so that I can talk about it. And I hope you guys have read it, and if you have, comment down below if you loved it. But I can't wait to talk about this book in more videos. Naturally, I saved the best for last. I do want to now talk about People We Meet on Vacation just a little bit. I have talked about this book, like I said, in almost every video, so I'm just going to give a quick little summary, I guess. People We Meet on Vacation is about Alex and Poppy, who have been traveling together every summer since they were 18. They are now 30. It's been 12 years of traveling. They met in university and realized that they were both from the same hometown and forged this bond together and became best friends and have been traveling together ever since. It has now been like 12 years since they started traveling, and Alex and Poppy are in sort of different phases of their lives. Something happened on a trip in Croatia 2 years ago, and they have not spoken since, other than, I think, a happy birthday every now and then. Poppy has realized that over the past 2 years, she has not truly been happy, and that she needs Alex in her life to be her true self and to be actually happy. And so in a last-ditch effort, she reaches out to him and wants to go on one final trip together to see if they can get back to their basics, back to their roots, and get that relationship back. This story is beautiful. It broke my heart the first time I read it because I just related so much to the idea of having someone in your life that was so important to you and then losing them, and just how your life changes without them in your life constantly. I really related to Poppy's character. I also loved that she's like a travel blogger. That was iconic. I loved hearing about the different trips that they went on, and as someone who loves to travel on a budget, shop on a budget, be a little bargain shopper, I loved Poppy. I thought she was super quirky and relatable and fun. Alex is once again one of the most phenomenal male characters in any book ever. He is so sweet, so funny, so hot. I just read it for a second time, and I just remember how in love I am with this story, and I just bawl my eyes out the whole time. So emotional, so sad, but so beautiful, so well done. Like, oh, I just can't even put into words how much I love this book. But it's obviously a 5-star read. It's still said to be one of my all-time favorite rom-com romance book. It's the book that made me absolutely fall in love with Emily Henry. I will recommend it to everyone. I never liked Friends to Lovers all that much until I read this. There they're just perfect. You know when you like have your person and you just want to be around them all the time, and what would life be like without them? That's what Alex and Poppy go through. And then they have to work out a bunch of issues and decide if they could be happy together. It's just a very emotional story, and yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. The characters are very well written. Once again, the banter is hilarious. The situations are wonderful. I love being on vacation. As someone who loves to travel, I love to read about the different places that they go and the different things that they do on their trips. So yeah, it's an amazing book. As you can tell through my ranting and incoherent thoughts, I am obsessed with Emily Henry. I think she is the most phenomenal writer. Everything she writes is hilarious. It's thought-provoking. She describes things perfectly. She has this way of describing what it's like to be in love with someone. So I just know she has someone that she loves more than anything in the world if she's able to describe that feeling so well. I love that every book she writes can make me absolutely sob, but also make me smile at ink on paper and laugh my ass off. So I will recommend Emily Henry to every single person. I know there's some people who maybe don't like her writing style. Couldn't be me. I don't really understand that, but I will read literally everything she writes. I can't wait for her to come out with another book, hopefully next year. But yes, basically, Emily Henry is the best. End tweet. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I have to say. Read her books. Pick them up. You won't regret it. They're life-changing. I hope everyone enjoys them as much as I do. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about my other favorite author, my next favorite author that I'm putting in this series. I'm hoping to talk about a couple more contemporary romance authors, as well as maybe some fantasy authors in this series, because I am enjoying talking about authors and why I love their work and just hyping them up. It's fun. And I have so much fun talking about it. So if you did like today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I do make new videos every Wednesday that you do not want to miss if you enjoy bookish content. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye!